Hello, fellow scholars and purveyors of morbid curiosities alike. I'm Dr. Caleb, joined by the meat puppet himself, Dr. Zach, and this is SCPod. Zach, how are you today?
Warm. How are you?
I wish I could go back maybe 2 weeks ago or whenever we recorded the last episode, because Greece was nice. Wherever I'm at currently, I got a burlap sack put over my head before I got to come in, so
Hmm.
I'm just somewhere. But it feels a lot like my cell at home, and let me tell you, I signed up for vacation time, not for sitting at home with busted toilets.
Yeah, just to check. Did you see any signs that say Site 66?
Uh, Maybe the numbers could have fallen off. I saw one that said 69. Ha, nice. Um, but the sign could have, the second number could have fallen off.
It might have. I just want to
Uh,
make sure. I just want to make sure they shipped you to the right place.
well, I'm sure if they didn't, then we will be talking about two different SCPs. So
Not
Zach,
again.
what SCP have you been studying this week?
Uh, I have been looking at SCP-2075. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-2075 is to be held in isolation within a containment unit capable of being hermetically sealed when required. Containment unit is to undergo remote decontamination daily, more if deemed necessary. SCP-2075 is to be supplied with bottled water and nutrient capsules via a pneumatic tube 3 times a day. All interactions with SCP-2075 are to be done by remote microphone. Observational windows are constructed of laminated ballistics glass. Any damage to the containment cell must be reported and repaired immediately by personnel equipped with a Level A hazmat gear. SCP-2075 are to be terminated via incineration and disposed of per hazardous waste protocols, unless authorized for research by Site Director. Biopsies are to be stored within individual cryogenic storage units. SCP-2075 has been contained at Sector G of Biological Containment Site 66 since its transfer from GRU Division P in 1991 in the wake of the USSR's dissolution.
Oh, thank God we were talking about the same one. There are some scary Sarkic SCPs out there, and
Yeah, there are.
I have had the wherewithal to only run into one of them, which was a bone cathedral, which is so much cooler so far.
Give it time.
So yeah, I guess God, where I don't even know where I'm being shipped off next week, but
Yeah, I
anyway,
do.
for those of you at home who are tuning in for this episode, we are covering Sarkic SCPs this season, and your boy is Mr. Worldwide and traveling to be on the ground research for all of these. So I came to Site 66 or 69, wherever the sign says, and yeah, we're talking about an old man.
Not the old man, mind you.
Oh no, but very very good clarification there. We are talking about an old man, not the old man. So SCP-2075 is currently a 63-year-old Caucasian man known as Alexei Kravchuk, and he was previously a security guard employed by GRU Division P. 2075 exhales a microbial pathogen that causes quote-unquote extreme neurological alterations, just like listening to this podcast. Subjects infected by SCP-2075 are known as 2075-A and are considered an extension of 2075. SCP-2075 can exert its anomalous powers regardless of distance and maintains control indefinitely unless the original 2075 is destroyed. Experiments with D-Class reveal that 2075 can use subjects as though it were its own body. If the current SCP-2075 is destroyed, SCP-2075-A would become the new 2075 and exhibit its same anomalous properties, including the pathogen. There could only be one 2075-A, the mind-controlled specimen, at a time. 2075 seems eager to talk with the Foundation staff and claims to be born in the year 1204 CE, which means in 1991 when it was captured, 2075 would have been approximately 787 years old, and he's looking damn good for being 800 years old.
Old man indeed.
Yeah. SCP-2075 prefers to speak in Russian, but has shown to be fluent in English, German, and an ancient Uralic language that seems lost to time, as it is not connected to any modern Uralic languages. And he seems to be literate, but has shown no interest in reading or writing. Zach, have I missed anything about anything? You know, we're writing on pretty much ancient texts here.
Yeah. That matches up with what the dossier says. I just want to confirm, when we talked about this in our last meeting before you went on your jet set adventure, 2075 was supposed to be Euclid, right?
Yeah. That's what all the things here have said.
Did you?
I would hesitate to wonder why it would ever be anything else.
Tell you what, there's some interview logs that were attached to this. Do you want to go over those real quick? I need to check on something real quick.
Yeah, it's actually really fun. I got to talk with some of the people that were actually there for the interview. So I got to interview the interviewees, or interviewers, whatever the word is. Minus one of them who was mysteriously missing. Anyway, so interview number 1 was done after transport and containment at Biological Containment Site 66 in 1991. There's some back and forth. He speaks in cryptic language, and much like most supernatural beings. But a big thing to take away from this one is he says his name is Karcist Varus, and says to have been imprisoned by the Tsars and experimented on by Stalin himself. Interview number 2 is the 7th interview with SCP-2075, with a focus on missing GRU Division P reports done in the interview was done in 1992. He claimed to be first detained during the Russian quote-unquote time of troubles between 1598 and 1613, and he says that he was branded a heretic and torn to pieces by an angry mob. If you have the chance to read this, or to listen or read the audio logs for this one, it's really interesting that he, the way that he talks about being connected to these dead bodies that he's currently walking around and stuff like that. But yeah, interview number 3 and the last interview that we have on record with him is the 43rd interview. Like I said before, this guy loves to yap. It was done in 1996 and was focused on the origin and the abilities of his anomalous properties. Claims he was gifted powers by Ion, the Grand Karcist of Adatum.
Directly?
And keen listeners will remember a Grand Karcist Ion that we talked about a lot last episode.
Meet Jesus.
He talks... Yes, meet Jesus. Not that regular Jesus is not made out of meat, but yeah.
That is a matter of contention and several schisms.
In this interview, he talks about the Church of the Broken God and calls them heathens and anathema. That is not a word that you see every day, so it fucked me up.
Anathema.
And he briefly mentions his powers and how his subjects and him are quote-unquote one. Yeah. Is there anything that you got out of those interviews that I may have missed, Dr. Zach?
I kind of wish you had been closer, or at least we planned this in advance, because then I could have done, the usual thing I do with recorded logs. But
Yes, since I realized that there were interviews here, I have been avoiding all pizza, and unfortunately, I missed out on the Site 66/69 pizza party because of it, and people were looking at me weird.
Yeah,
And by looking at me weird, I mean looking at me kind of the same that they always do.
Yeah, that's fair. Dr. Caleb, I believe I owe you an apology, and I need to update your timesheet.
Oh.
Because you're on Keter duty.
Am I on Keter? That's the...
Yeah, there's...
Wait a second.
Yeah, there's a level 4 clearance for this, and there was an update in 2014. The updated Special Containment Procedures as of 2014 is that SCP-2075 is currently uncontained and its location is unknown. Description: SCP-2075 is a Gestalt consciousness currently occupying an unknown number of hosts. SCP-2075 exhales a microbial pathogen capable of extreme neurological alterations. Those infected by SCP-2075 are SCP-2075-A are considered an extension of SCP-2075. SCP-2075, how many times do you have to write it, goddamn? Anyway, the SCP is able to exert its anomalous effects regardless of distance after initial infection and will maintain control indefinitely unless SCP-2075 are destroyed. That is to say, SCP-2075-A are destroyed. And there was another audio log detailing the what seems to be the murder of that missing researcher that you didn't run into, Dr. Caleb. It looks like the research staff and the security staff were also infected by 2075, presumably prior to them even becoming employees. And fortunately, the recording of the murder of Dr. Albert Cronenberg isn't attached to the file, but he was killed by 2 other Foundation staff who were apparently 2075-A's.
I was so careful. And
yeah,
I knew that there were interviews, and I knew the far reaches of your influence to drug me for these audio logs. And I was so careful to not get drugged. But
yeah,
I just took some amnestics. I'm remembering a little bit. And I remember this agent coming over and handing me a thing of Mentos. And I don't even like Mentos, but I ate them anyway. And after I popped one in my mouth, he said, "It kind of tastes like amnestics, doesn't it?" And it's all blank after that.
That's very funny.
Is this your doing? Did you do this to me, Zach? I need you to be honest with me.
Dr. Caleb, when have I not been honest with you? Anyway.
You're right, you're right.
So, it looks like, according to the description here, 2075 isn't that dude. Gestalt kind of being a word meaning, like, a combination entity of multiple things, to kind of put it in the simpler term. So, that old dude we had probably wasn't the original 2075, at least in a corporeal sense. So it's just out there.
I guess it kind of makes sense, because he talks about how he was ripped apart by an angry mob and watched it happen through the eyes of one of his subjects, one of his SCP-275 or 2075As. So it wouldn't be a leap of the imagination to say that this Alexei Kravchov, I think was his name, or Kravchuk, Alexei Kravchuk, is actually 63 years old and is just the current host of the origin of 2075. Is that what I'm kind of getting at here?
I don't think that's. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at, but I don't think that's true. I think that the actual entity of 2075 is that interdispersed sense of that interdispersed consciousness between all the various 2075-A's. And so what I kind of think happened is that the guy we had locked up was a 2075-A, like everyone else, but the actual 2075 is that Gestalt consciousness between all of the A's. And so, unless
So
you
it's
have
kind of like
all
a
of them
grave mind.
kind of like a grave mind, exactly. And so, like, unless you have them all locked up, it's not contained. And I think that if any 2075-A, and this is me kind of speculating, but if any 2075-A is capable of creating more dash A's, then as long as you have one, at least one out there, then it's not contained at all.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, and one that I'm very hesitant to think about.
So, how do you feel? You doing okay out there?
I mean, I'm always in a point of existential crisis.
Hmm.
Sometimes it elevates depending on how many drugs I've consumed. Um, but I think I'm doing okay. I don't think I've eaten any bugs or inhaled any pathogens today or within the
Hmm.
last week. It would make a lot more sense why I'm the only one walking around without a hazmat suit on.
Yeah, you should probably find one. Looking further down the file, uh, it looks like after Dr. Cronenberg was killed by the 2075-A's, security personnel were alerted when the containment was broken, and they saw an amorphous mass of flesh and bone, considerable in size, destroyed or disabled defense perimeters. In that the sector was flooded with the chemical defenses, which eliminated the biological part. Looks like heavy casualties were suffered, around 56 fatalities. The DNA that was found literally everywhere in Sector G was a match for the Dr. Cronenberg. And this is where it looks like the investigation concluded that that Jacob D. Moore and Jonathan Lee, who were the 2075-A infected staff, had been employed for years by the Foundation. So it wasn't even just like a when they brought this dude in, but they had been here forever, pretty much.
Do you think that those security guards were infected prior to their employment at the SCP Foundation, or I
I
am
think that's
under
what
the
the
impression
report.
that
I think that's what the report was getting at, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, if there's an unknown number of 2075-A's out there, just spreading around, I would be surprised if there aren't more out there than would be able to be really tracked.
yeah.
Almost like a weird Manchurian agent or Manchurian candidate situation where they're just out there living from all outside appearances a life until acting on whatever group consciousness controls them as a
until they
maybe waiting. So
until they get winter soldiered and they come back to being a Sarkic agent.
yeah, and then the report closes out saying that we tried to find the GRU Division P personnel associated with the containment of 2075, but they were all recorded as deceased or missing. So that's cheery.
Well, I'm really glad that I never, I kept asking to go speak with 2075, and everybody kept telling me no. So I'm glad that nobody let me go talk to him, because
Well,
first
also
of all he's
because
missed me,
he's not there. Well, I
but
mean, also, I mean, how would you know? I mean, how do you know you haven't talked to him already?
I am not gonna go eat more memestics. I
It's
I
okay.
I've
We'll find
already
you.
uh I've already regressed and dug up past points of like I remember some of the druggings that you did to me now.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a normal day at the
It
SCP
was for the
Foundation.
show,
You
Dr. Caleb.
you have about a 50% chance to be drugged and given amnestics on any given day. It just so happens that the coin usually lands on me getting drugged and not Dr. Zach.
Yeah, I would say that working for the SCP Foundation has this very similar employee policy as Aperture Labs, where sometimes you're just part of the test.
That's very true. That's very true. So, Zach, while you sit in your cozy wherever you're at right now, and I'm stuck here at site 66/69, um, how does this fit into the overall lore of Sarkicism?
Uh, I would say it does slightly. SCP-2075 identifies itself as a Karcist, which is sort of like a priest caste. Sort of like I was supposed they were like the highest extant members of the whatever the Karcist religion is right now, because the only thing above them, according to what we have for an organizations chart, so I don't know how accurate that is that the only people above him would be like a Clavigar, which is sort of like a Sarkic apostle, if that makes sense. Um, the method of transmission, as far as we know, seems to be those microbial pathogens, which is in line with the idea that Sarkicism has a general veneration for disease and rot in general. So that seems to be in line with that, and maybe as a play on that sort of veneration of disease and decay. So I would say that's where the tie-in is. But typically with Sarkism, there's this idea and prevailing sense of body horror, and I suppose it does also touch on that with the idea that you are no longer you, and your body is just being controlled against your will because your will's been supplanted by 2075. So I would say this falls on the more subtle forms of Sarkism we were likely to run into while doing covering these.
So my thought is this how they convert more followers? Because I think you said during the last episode you don't understand the want to follow a religion like this.
Yeah.
What if people aren't following the religion and they're being converted by what is this pathogen?
I mean, I guess we don't know. I would personally wonder if all of these entities, these 2075-A's, count as more than one person. But
I think they would count as more than one person on the census.
For tax purposes, sure. For the meat taxes, but I guess there's no real way to answer that question. I think no more than any other religion.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, maybe Grand Karcist Ion exists. He gets his group of loyal followers, and then this pathogen is what converts people into this cult.
I mean, it could be like what it could be like the idea that there's a bacteria or a parasite in cat droppings that makes you more like your cat more. And that may be a stretch, but it kind of makes you think about that.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's not the most outrageous thing on Earth that there could be this external compulsion on a biological level to follow a certain idea or have a certain feeling towards something. So, I mean, that's certainly within the realm of possibility. So maybe that is some level of factor in it. But it's worth pointing out that people follow a faith or a religion or a philosophy even for certain personal reasons that are hard to quantify to outside sources like us. Like you and like I, Dr. Caleb, am famously an atheist. So I don't necessarily understand the appeal.
And you
but
don't let us hear the end of it.
Sure don't. But that could also. But what I'm saying is that like me not understanding why someone wouldn't want to follow a religion like Sarkism, I don't think should be indicative of like why anyone would want to follow Sarkism in general. I think that's mostly just a personal failing on my part to just understand that. But that being said, like I think there could be an explanation for why someone would follow Sarkism with the pathogen, but I don't think it would be a reasonable leap to say that is the only reason why.
Yeah, I could see that. I would push back a little bit and say that, like, I feel like both of us would still go hang out with the sharks or whatever in the Great Barrier Reef Foundation or whatever. I feel
Yeah.
like if we ever defected from the SCP Foundation, which we're not,
We're not.
but if we did, we would go chill with the shark homies, and that's cult-like as well. So I think
It
that,
is cult-like.
you know, it really just depends on what appeals to your want to assimilate.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of making a bad joke, with 2075, you quite literally would be part of something bigger than yourself.
That's very true. Yeah, I am very glad I did not see the security footage of that quote unquote wall of flesh or whatever that
Yeah.
attacked the facility. Because that just terrifies me. That actually just like, I don't know, like I'd lose sanity points right there.
Yeah, it's like the Blob, or like that one bad 50s sci-fi movie. Which I think it's called the Blob. I'm thinking about it.
You just angered a very passionate fan base, I feel.
All one of them. I was gonna say, as far as we know, 2075 and all the 2075-A's that constitute it are just out there. We have no fucking clue where they are.
Yeah. That actually is my next point, is the scale of the assimilation of this of 2075, where like we had no idea that these two dudes, I mean, we didn't even know that it could infect more than one dude for a really long time, and like realistically, based off of wherever I'm at right now, I'm sure that's not Russia, but depending on where we're at, like we brought 2075 over here and it was in Russia, like how many people has he really infected? And like if he's been around for 800-ish years, that's a long time to be putting bugs in people.
Yeah, and I would wonder if it passes down from like generationally too. You kind of have to want you kind of have to believe so, because like if not like direct transmission, but just by being around the 2075-A's all the time would probably do it to someone. So I mean, assuming that's true, it wouldn't be far fetched to think that there are just entire families that are just 2075-A's out there, communities.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a microbial pathogen. It would spread like a microbial pathogen that's airborne. And so I mean, like, you ride an elevator with the wrong dude one day, and now you're just not you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially if 2075A can also secrete the pathogen. And then you're right, like if you just bump into the wrong guy or some random guy burps in your face, like now you're part of the meat puppets.
Now you're part of the meat puppets. And this is obviously the draw corollary, I think, or draws a corollary to 2075. I think being almost like a mimetic disease, if that makes sense, like some sort of cognitive pathogen that just spreads like a disease, because I mean it kind of is. So I mean, there's been a pandemic of this been going on for nearly 800 years, and we just now stumbled across it 10 years ago from the time of recording.
Yeah, no, it's uniquely horrifying. Take a drink. It's uniquely horrifying because you never, I mean, like, you could be this sleeper agent for years and then transformed, or maybe you just know already and your actions are being controlled by this this grave mind, this hive mind of meat.
Would you even know?
I don't know very many things, honestly. So
Me neither.
this did not qualify under my PhD in spooky things.
Though it is the spooky thing.
It is a spooky thing, and I did write my thesis paper on 610, which is tangentially related. We'll get into that later. But but we never covered any kind of meat puppets or pathogens or I don't even have basic math skills.
I want to ask how in the hell you got a PhD writing a thesis on 610, but that's a question for a later time.
It turns out pieces of paper that are printed out can say whatever you want on them.
That makes sense. That makes more sense, yeah.
How bad do you think he smells?
Oh, I think generally we can assume any of the Sarkic SCPs are going to smell pretty fucking bad.
I think when I was reading this, like, pathogen jumped out at me as like something that you could smell, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's like a little bit dumb, but something tells me this guy reeks.
Well, I mean, there's a smell that comes with being sick. I feel like that's something we all kind of know. So I mean, he probably smells like a sick dude. I mean, this is a religion that's founded on venerating disease and meat. So diseased meat, we can assume, and some of us know from life experiences, does not smell great.
So what's your excuse, or what are you infected with?
Life, Dr. Caleb. I am infected with life.
Do you think this could be political propaganda? Now, hear me out.
What?
91 is when we came into handling this guy, right after the fall of communism. Do you think there is a possibility that this was made up by whatever presidential guy was in office at the time as an allegory for the Red Scare?
No, I don't. And I would it's just you. I would explain yourself, Doctor.
Well, all I'm saying is, like, the Red Scare of, like, you know a communist next door, and he's going to infect your children and your wife, and then they're going to they're going to become communist, and then it just takes over America. Isn't that exactly what's happening with this pathogen? I mean, the guy is Russian. I feel like that's not something that can just be brushed past here.
I would say that if they were going that route, they probably could have just used 610, which is literally called the Red Death.
That's very true.
But so thinking critically on what you just said, I think that, I mean, that is a read of it, sure. I didn't really think about it, but I mean, that's kind of an interesting angle. Like, this disease that sort of takes away the individuality of you. I mean, if you're the kind of person that really went whole hog into anti-communist propaganda that came out in the second half of the 20th century in the United States and the Western world in general, sure. I don't think that was what the idea was.
You don't think it's political propaganda?
I don't.
You don't think that the SCP Foundation has, like, this file? Look, all I'm saying is, I did not meet the guy. I have not seen any remnants that he was ever here. There is a distinct possibility he doesn't exist. The SCP Foundation has this dude, this file, and they're waiting for another Red Scare to be like, well, we've actually known about this, and it's actually a pathogen. Communism is a pathogen.
I would say the biggest problem with your line of reasoning is that there's a lot of SCPs we can't physically see or interact with that we just kind of know are there. Like SCP-55, for example.
What do you think happens when all the -A's unionize?
I don't know, like, because they're all the same person, they're the same consciousness, and so I mean, like, is it just a bigger group of itself?
They should be unionizing.
Well,
It'd be really easy for them to unionize.
So I feel like this is something where a lawyer could have some fun with, because typically, at least in the United States, you need at least two people to form a union. But if they're all the same consciousness, does that legally make it one person and unable to unionize?
Does the company need to be American for you to unionize? Could we unionize? against the SCP
Oh,
Foundation. Not that we would. Not that we would.
Dr. Caleb, I'm going to tell you to stop
I'm
on
asking
reasoning right
questions.
now, because at least one of us who's still not globetrotting may have to suffer consequences for it, so we're going to move right on.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. What else is there to say about Mr. Old Guy who smells bad and converts people to communism?
I wouldn't say communism, but I would say this is definitely meat Jesus propaganda.
Okay. All I'm saying is Sarkikism not trying to serve a greater good by donating your body to fleshy magic?
I would say that's exactly what it is, but I don't think it has anything to do with socialism. Which sadly does not have a lot to do with fleshy magic.
I feel like if it did, Bernie Sanders would have been president by now.
Yeah, like the multi-tentacled Hydra of Bernie Sanders just like sliming its way into the White House. It's like in Night Vale where a 5-headed dragon runs for mayor.
Exactly. But yeah, is there anything else you can really say about this guy? I have a bunch of existential stuff to contemplate, but including if I'm actually a communist.
I would say that if 2075 or 2075-A's are listening, to write in. Where are you? We just want to talk.
Please call into the show.
Yeah.
But only call in. I'm not going to interview you because I'm afraid that you smell bad.
And what's the worst that could happen?
Exactly. Well, in the meantime, Zach, where can people find the propaganda that you're spreading?
They can find the propaganda that I'm spreading over on my personal blog of Roll for Writing, which is at makeawritingcheck.blogspot.com. And as of the day of this recording, they can also find a new video project I dropped over on the YouTube channel, Roll for Writing Presents.
Sick. I urge everybody to go check that out. You can follow me at Calica1738 on Twitter and Instagram. All I do there is repost stuff about the podcast, so you could just follow the podcast at the source. You can follow it on Twitter, which I am terrible at updating, but I do, at SCPod_cast. You can find it on Instagram at SCPod.cast. You can find us on Spotify and YouTube. And please make like the meat puppets that you are, and like, rate, follow, subscribe, comment, find our individual PayPals and send us $100. Do whatever you need to do or want to do, and just know that any and all interaction does really help the podcast out and help us get to people that might like our content. In the meantime, Zach, what are we covering next week? Where am I going?
Where am I sending
Because
you?
Site 69 was fun and all, but it's not as great as you would expect Site 69 to be.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're all in hazmat suits. Next week, we're going to be
They're not
talking
even
about...
freaky hazmat suits.
Right, they're not even latex. So next week, we're going to be talking about 2480, an unfinished ritual.
Interesting. That sounds like I'm going somewhere somewhat even spookier than this week. Okay, well, that should be fun. All right, well, until next week, we'll see you then. And Zach, what are your words of advice for the fellow meat puppets out there?
610 doesn't hate you, it's just disappointed.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.